I am making an update to my dracotail deck. This is currently a light and darkness build. I'm only trying the light and darkness dragon version because I feel like it's kind of funny to just make a light and darkness dragon lord and you're just to eat up 3 of your opponent's cards. And also the fact that the 2 main deck light and darkness dragon monsters are also extenders in this deck, as they let you fusion summon once per turn. So there's another way to fusion summon. So this is currently a test build for it. But starting off with the dracotail monsters, I play 2 copies of dracotail Frixel. I honestly do want to play a 3rd copy, but I only have 2 at the moment. But all the dracotail monsters share the effect, or all the spellcasters in the main deck share the effect that if they are sent to the graveyard. Let's see, I can't remember if it's sent to the graveyard or if they have to be banished. Okay, if they're sent to the graveyard for a fusion summon. I could never remember how it's worded. But when sent to the graveyard as fusion material, you can set a dracotail spell or trap from your deck. And the dragons do the same thing, but then they have a secondary effect that can be used. But Frixel has the effect that on summon, you target a dracotail that's in your graveyard, special summon it, and then return a dracotail on your field back to your hand. Which one thing I like to do is normal summon this, target the Fey Mana that's in the graveyard, summon Fey Mana, and then return Fey Mana to hand. And then the other thing is all the dracotail cards are hard once per turns. Next, I play 3 copies of dracotail Malulu. Malulu is a main phase specific quick effect to fusion summon. And then after setting a dracotail spell or trap, Malulu can then non-target negate the effects of one monster on the field. One other thing I should mention is the dracotail cards will lock you into fusion monsters, at least the effects that involve fusion summoning, for the rest of the turn. And then the dracotail cards specifically only let you fusion summon a dragon or a spellcaster. So there was a previous build I made using thunder dragons that does not actually work the way it was because I was under the impression that it was just normal fusion summon. Next, I play 3 copies of Lucius. Lucius, when on summon, lets you add a dracotail monster from your deck to your hand, except for another copy of itself. And then I play 3 copies of Fey Mana. Fey Mana is the main one you usually want to be opening, as Fey Mana has an effect that during the main phase you can discard her to then be able to fusion summon a dragon or spellcaster monster using monsters from your hand or field as material. And then next I play 1 copy of dracotail Pan and 1 copy of dracotail Urgula. I'm probably going to end up moving Urgula back to 2, but that's just because of how my locals is. A lot of people like having cards in their spell and trap zone. Urgula just happens to non-target destroy spells and traps once after it sets a dracotail spell or trap card. And then Pan will let you non-target destroy an attack position monster on the field after setting a dracotail spell or trap. But unlike the rest of the dracotails, these 2 do not have effects on summon. Instead, they have a graveyard effect, where Urgula lets you banish it to target a non-fusion spellcaster dracotail that's in your graveyard. And then put this card at the bottom. I say banish it, but you put it at the bottom of your deck and then you summon that target. I believe it has to be a spellcaster. It may just be a non-fusion dracotail. In your graveyard, target spellcaster. Okay, I lied again. You can tell I've hardly ever used the grave effects because I don't have them memorized. But you banish this, target a spellcaster dracotail, such as Fey Mana, to then put this card at the bottom of the deck, and then you return the targeted monster back to your hand. Pan can only activate if your fusion monster is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, but you can banish it to then target a non. I believe this is the target a non-fusion dracotail in your grave and special summon it. Let's see. But it's quite at the bottom of the deck. Special summon one. Okay, so it does not target the summon. It'll put itself at the bottom of the deck. Summon a non-fusion dracotail, which my immediate choice would either be Frixel, because I have a Femena engrave, or I would summon Malulu, which can then be able to just be able to fusion summon, as long as it's in the main phase. Then for supporting fusion or monsters, I play 3 copies of King of the Swamp. King of the Swamp just acts as any one specific name for mentioned on a fusion monster's material, or you can discard it to add polymerization from your deck to your hand. Then I play 3 copies of Dark End. What was it? Evaporation Dragon? Yes. Dark End Evaporation Dragon. It can be special summoned from your hand by banishing a level 8 dragon from your extra deck. Which, usually what I will do is banish Dracotail Arthalion. Just because Arthalion can be recycled back with the traps. And I usually only ever really need 2 Arthalion, and since I play 3, might as well. But this monster has the effect that you can activate one of 2 effects, where you can have it lose 500 attack and defense permanently. I believe it targets a monster your opponent controls and destroys it. Let's see, yeah, you target one other face-up monster on the field. This loses 500 attack and defense permanently. Destroy that target, or you can fusion summon. The only downside of these cards is that if you use their effects, you're locked into dragons from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. So that is one thing you can consider. Just make sure you aren't planning on summoning any more spellcaster monsters from the extra deck after when you summon these, or when you use their effects to fusion summon. And then next, I play 3 copies of Light End Sublimation Dragon. This monster has the same summoning requirement as Dark End Evaporation. Well, as the effect that during the main phase, you can fusion summon. And then if an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can have this card lose 500 attack and defense permanently to reduce that attacking monster's attack by 1500. Which I've never seen those effects actually be used. The only effects I've ever seen these used for are the fusion summon effects. And then for the hand traps, I play 3 copies of Molcharmi Perulia. This card can be discarded as long as you have no cards on your field. You can discard it to then be able to make it so that when your opponent summons from the hand, you can draw 1 card. And you can only use 2 Molcharmi effects per turn. Or you can only activate 2 Molcharmi effects per turn. Next, I play 3 copies of Fualos. Fualos is the same thing as Perulia, but instead you draw a card when your opponent would summon from deck or extra deck. And then they both have the end phase effect of if you have more cards in your hand than your opponent has on the field plus 6, you randomly shuffle cards from your hand back to the deck equal to the surplus. So like if you do that and your opponent lets you draw until you have like 22 cards in hand, but they only have 3 cards on field, you then have to randomly shuffle 13 cards back into the deck. I don't know where I got those numbers from, but oh well. Moving on to the spells. The spells, I play 1 copy of Polymerization, just because it's searchable off of King of the Swamp. And because I'm playing Polymerization, that should also say that Guardian Chimera is in fact in the extra deck. Next, I play 3 copies of Rahu Dracotail. Rahu Dracotail is essentially branded fusion. The only downside is you can only use 1 Dracotail monster from your deck, as the current Dracotail fusion monsters all say a Dracotail monster plus 1 or more monsters from your hand. So Rahu just lets you use a Dracotail that's in your deck to fusion summon, and then monsters from your hand. But this does lock you into fusions for the rest of the turn. Next, I play 3 copies of Ketu Dracotail. Ketu Dracotail lets you add a Dracotail monster from your deck to your hand, And then if your opponent controls a monster, you can then fusion summon a dragon or spellcaster fusion monster. And like I said before, all of the dracotail cards are hard ones per turns. Next, I play a card that I actually honestly really like, which is 3 copies of Dragon's Light and Darkness. Dragon's Light and Darkness has 3 effects. You can only use each effect once per turn. So if you open all 3, but you're somehow able to make a board, which I honestly doubt, but you can use all 3 effects in one turn. However, the first effect I honestly never use because it involves putting back a level 8 dragon, but you can grab another level 8 dragon of a different attribute, not level. But with this deck, that would just mean you can swap Dark End for Light End or vice versa, which is not really a point to doing that since they both will let you fusion summon. But it also has the effect that when your opponent activates a card or effect that would target your dragon monster, you can negate that effect if you destroy that card. Whereas I believe it's a negate and destroy for targeting. Let's see. No, you negate that effect. And its other effect will let you target a dragon monster you control to have it gain 200 attack times its level, which I know that's meant to be used on the Light and Darkness boss monster, which is Light and Darkness Dragon Lord, because it is a level 10 monster, so this would give it an additional 2,000 attack, which would give it 2 more negates, in theory. Which mostly this will be used for its attack increase or the targeting negate, which ideally I would use it for the target negate, but if my opponent hasn't activated anything that targets a dragon, then I would just set it for the damage step. Here's an additional 1,600 for Arthalion. And then for the traps, I play 2 copies of dracotail Sting. One thing I'll go ahead and say about all the traps is they each have their own unique effect, and then they let you put a dracotail card that's banished or in your graveyard at the bottom of your deck and draw 1 card. Which unfortunately means all of them can be ashed. But that's one thing I like about this deck is that there are so many cards that can be hit by Ash Blossom that Ash doesn't really effectively do anything. Like they have 2 cards that search for a monster. They have 3 cards that let you just draw. And it's not really that high of an impact, and then there's also the Molcharmies, which each can be ashed as well. But dracotail Sting lets you target up to 1 each of a monster or a spell and trap card. Banish those targets, and then, like I said earlier, you put a dracotail spell or trap. Put a dracotail card that's banished face up, or is in your graveyard, bottom of the deck, to draw 1 card. Next, I play 2 copies of dracotail Horn. Horn lets you target an attack position monster on the field, return it to the hand, which I actually used this in the Shaddoll variant of this deck, where my opponent was about to out El Shaddoll Winda, so I just used Horn to return Winda to my hand, or extra deck really, and then because I had Malulu in play and a Shaddoll in my hand, I used Malulu to just resummon Winda. However, I will admit I did make a mistake and I didn't wait for my opponent to activate a card or effect that lets them special summon. But then the last card I play 2 of is 2 Dracotail Flame. You can easily play each of these traps at 1, as they can recycle each other. But I like playing them at 2, just because I like being able to have multiple sets so that if I don't need them, they're still there later on. But Flame will let you target a spell or trap your opponent controls and negates effects till the end of the turn. And that is it for the main deck. I believe the main deck is 44 cards, which I know I've been told I only need to play 1 Frixel, so if you really want to make those 40 cards, you take out 1 of each of the traps and a single copy of Frixel. And then moving on to the extra deck. For the extra deck, I play 3 copies of Dracotail Gulamel. Gulamel has the effect that if you activate a Dracotail card or effect, and your opponent does not activate anything in response to it, then Gulamel can target 1 card on on the field. I can't remember if it's on the field or on the opponent's side of the field. Let's see. Target one card your opponent controls. And then destroy that card. And then Dracotail Arthalion, the other fusion monster for this archetype, has the same grave effect as Gulamel does, which is if 2 or more Dracotail monsters are sent to the graveyard at the same time, then you can special summon this card from your graveyard. However, if this card leaves the field, it is banished. And then next, I play 1 copy of Mysterion the Dragon Crown. Mysterion has the effect that when your opponent activates a monster effect that summons a monster, on the summoning of that monster, you can activate Mysterion's effect to be able to banish all monsters on the field with that same type. Which, this is my main answer against decks like Yummy, for example. And then Mysterion will also lose 100 attack and defense for each of your banished monsters, I believe. It's either monsters or cards. For each of your banished cards. Okay, once your opponent activates a monster effect to summon itself. That's what it is. Which, well, you know, the Yummy monsters just happen to have effects that summon themselves. And then next, I play 1 copy of Secretarian Dragon. This is mainly for... It's an extender that also works as an answer for the mirror match, where Secretarian Dragon has the same attack loss effect as Mysterion the Dragon Crown, as well as both of them also their fusion materials being a dragon and a spellcaster. But Secretarian Dragon also has the effect that once per turn, you can target a dragon and a spellcaster monster in your graveyard, summon one, and shuffle the other back into the deck. Which I remember one thing I actually did in the Shadal variant, which is what I played recently at like locals and got 4th place with. One thing I actually like doing with that is make a window, and then when it's my turn, fuse off the window, make this, and once I'm done doing things where I only have 1 summon left I want to do, just bring back out Shadal window. Because for some reason the Shadal monsters that aren't a must-be fusion, or not all of them have the must-be fusion summoned. And then next, I play 3 copies of Dracotail Arthalion. Arthalion is one of the better interruptions of the deck, where when it's fusion summoned, requiring a Dracotail monster and 1 or more monsters from your hand, you can target monsters on the field or in the graveyard up to the number of monsters used from your hand to fusion summon it, return them to the hand. And then, like I said before, it has the same revival effect as Gulamel. And then, well, we don't need to do the hard monster return part. And then next is a monster I have yet to actually use, but I do like at least being there, which is 1 copy of Philia Regis. Philia Regis has the effect that during the main phase, as a quick effect, you can target 1 card your opponent controls, or in their graveyard, banish it. And then if you banished a card that was on the field, you can return a dragon monster you control to the hand. At the start of your opponent's battle phase, if this card is in your graveyard, you can turn a dragon monster you control to the hand or extra deck, and if you do, special summon this card. Which, one thing I will say is that Philia Regis is a lot easier to make in this deck if you just use, like, let's see, I think it has to be a dragon fusion monster, I believe. It has to be a dragon fusion monster plus a level 7 or higher dragon, which Dracotail Pan just happens to be a level 7 or higher dragon. Next, I play 1 copy of Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. This is the reason why King of the Swamp is in the deck, because King of the Swamp can be treated as Dark Magician. Then King of the Swamp is also in the deck because it can be treated as Blue Eyes White Dragon for Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon. This card is another reason why you can get away with playing each of the traps at 1. Because Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon has the effect of it can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each. Then once per turn, at the end of the damage step, if this card attacks, you can set a trap card from your graveyard. And then lastly, it is unaffected by trap cards. But I hardly ever actually am able to make Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon because most of the time when I can, Red Eyes Dragoon is just a lot better. And then because I'm playing Polymerization, I figured I might as well play Guardian Chimera. Guardian Chimera must be fusion summoned using at least one monster on your field and at least one monster in your hand, requiring 3 monsters with different names. But when it's summoned, you can destroy cards your opponent controls up to the numbers of monsters on field you use to summon it. And then you can also just draw cards from your hand equal to the number of monsters used to summon it. But just know that in order to get the draw effect, you must also get the destruction effect. So if your opponent does something and they no longer have cards on their field, then you just can't draw any cards. And then its other effect is it cannot be targeted by card effects while Polymerization is in your graveyard. So if any deck I have that plays Polymerization, there's always going to be at least one Guardian Chimera. And then lastly, for the extra deck, I play 3 copies of Light and Darkness Dragon Lord. Light and Darkness Dragon Lord is just a mandatory Omni Negate, as when a card or effect is activated, except for another copy of itself, once per chain, it will lose 1,000 attack and defense permanently to then negate and destroy that card. And then it also has an effect on destruction. I just don't remember what it is. You don't negate the effect, you negate the activation. And then this card's owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card. You can target a dragon monster in your graveyard and special summon it. That's what it was. But I do like the idea with Dragon's Light and Darkness that this is a 5 negate. Just because of it being able to be Light and Darkness be able to boost it by 2,000. But that is it for the extra deck. The usual banishes for the summoning of Dark End and Light End ordinarily would be an Arthalion, just because the traps can put Arthalion back in the extra deck. Or if I really need to, I'll banish either Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon or Ophelia Regis, as those are the only other ones I would choose. But that is it for my Light and Darkness dracotail deck profile. If you have any ideas what you can do to improve the deck, any ideas for decks like to see made in the future, or decks like to see face each other, feel free to comment down below, and thank you for watching.